Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks here alongside Ross Jackson. It's a beautiful Thursday in New Orleans. The weather's getting colder. The stores are going to be out of gumbo, andouille sausage, and chicken, all that fun stuff. So, as soon as it gets cool in New Orleans, everybody's flocking to the store and going to get gumbo ingredients. How you
Yep.
doing, Ross?
I'm good. I knew this was coming. I got all my gumbo ingredients about 2 weeks ago. I knew it was going to be on the way. I cannot wait. We get a little bit of a day tomorrow of rest, and I'm going to be standing in front of my stove for an hour making sure my roux's right.
That's right. That's right. The roux is what makes it tip. Like, you got to have the roux, and the darker the better, right? So
yes,
hopefully you guys don't go up north and get gumbo, because I've never seen anything
that's
like that.
soup over
Reminds me
there.
of Kansas City when we had that potato salad. That was like really
Oh
sus.
my goodness.
It was like hard potatoes, and it was like apples. I don't know. It's crazy. But anyways, we got a game to talk about because obviously that's the pressing reason. Saints come in here 2-4. Broncos 3-3. Obviously we know what the pomp and circumstance is. It's Sean Payton coming back to the Superdome.
Yep.
Drew Brees getting honored in the Saints Hall of Fame at halftime. Just all sorts of emotions. They got the rally towels. It's primetime football. But this is obviously more importantly, the Saints, as battered as they are with 17 players on their injury report, they got to find a way to win this game tonight.
Yeah, this is again, we're talking about a must win, and we're not even into like double digit games in the season yet. And this is I'm tired, boss. And this is an AFC game as well. It's an AFC matchup where usually you talk about how okay, well, these you can afford to drop if you need to, or if something happens, whatever. But the Saints have to get a win here because they're trying to avoid a 5-game losing skid after a 2-game win streak to start things out. This is a massively important game for New Orleans, and I'll tell you what, John, it's a massively important game for kind of understanding their future a little bit too, because they're going to be relying on a lot of young guys in this matchup, especially in the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, look, Spencer Rattler gets another start. I thought it was interesting that Derek Carr was doubtful for this game. I think that's probably an indication that he might be ready for the Chargers game when they get this mini bye. So we'll see. But what an opportunity for Spencer Rattler. What an opportunity for Bub Means, Mason Tipton. I mean, like I joke and saying this kind of like has the preseason vibe to it in a way, but like this is the youth that's going to be leading the charge for this team tonight. No Rashid Shaheed. He's got the knee injury and he's going to have meniscus surgery. He's out in Los Angeles. No Chris Olave because he's in the concussion protocol. So you're going to see a lot of Mason Tipton. You're going to see a lot of Bub Means. I'd expect them to call up somebody from the practice squad too. Kendra Miller hopefully makes his return. So you're going to see a lot of injected youth into the Saints offense. And look, it's a tall task going against a Denver defense that's pretty darn good. What does Spencer Rattler need to do? And what can the Saints offense, who has struggled heavily over the past several games, do to actually put points up on the board and be able to move the ball against this Denver defense?
Yeah, look, they had Spencer Rattler on 12 different designed rollouts up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think you keep that going. I think you keep getting him on the move. You keep moving the pocket with him in the passing game. But I think the most important thing is going to be getting the run game going. And, John, that's not going to be easy. The New Orleans Saints run outside the tackles on 72.8% of their runs so far this season. That's the second highest rate at the NFL. And, of course, the Denver Broncos, the second lowest success rate allowed to runs outside the tackles. So this is where, hopefully you get a guy like Kendra Miller that can come in and give you a little bit of that change of pace up the middle so that you can have a little bit more variety in your run game, which was really important between sort of the forgive the phrase, but it's the only one I can think of at the moment, boom and zoom between Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill early in the season. So maybe you can get the opportunity to replicate that and then force Denver into a little bit of discomfort when it comes to the run game. That would be the best thing that New Orleans can do to help out its offense, I think.
Yeah, and look, I didn't like how they got off to this start last week. I mean, look, a rookie quarterback in his first game situation, you go down 17, like you just didn't do him any favors. And obviously, we're still
Yeah,
wondering what in the heck that second quarter was against the Bucks, and then the second half was just atrocious, right? And I mean, I think that was because you put more pressure on the rookie quarterback. And
yeah,
look, I think he handled himself pretty well, all things considered. You know, of course, we're not going to sit here and say it was an elite game or anything, but
sure.
I think the key is obviously getting the run, getting some jitters out in this game, because you're going to have some younger players in here, which could lead to more pre-snap penalties, like the Saints have been notorious for, that wiped a Jawan Johnson big play away against
Mm,
the Bucks with an illegal shift. But you know, again, it's really about, you're right, setting up this run. Which it's interesting because obviously Kendre Miller back. I wonder if Jamal Williams is going to be even active for this game, or they're just
right. Yeah.
for Mims, because Williams' snaps has just decreased every single week, and he had less than 5. And you know, Darren Rizzi talking about special teams, doing like a committee.
Hmm.
They do like Jordan Mims. He's offers that upside, so that'll be interesting for me to see tonight. But you know, look, get Spencer Rattler comfortable in those situations. I thought he had the nice chemistry with Bub Means last week, and
Hmm.
obviously that's going to be a big one. I mean, you're talking about wide receiver one tonight, and is Bub Means, and I think the tight ends are going to be a big part of this. I think
Yeah, for
Rattler can
sure.
make some really good throws on the run, but you know, again, you don't want him necessarily standing in the pocket and just waiting for that offensive line to collapse, and then bad things are just going to happen.
Yeah, especially against Denver. Denver right now has the second highest pressure percentage in the NFL at 41%. They get after players, they get after quarterbacks with blitzers as well. They have the highest total of pressures while utilizing a blitz, just in terms of raw numbers. They come after the quarterback. They also play one of the highest rates of five-man fronts in the NFL as well, which is the thing that gave the New Orleans Saints a lot of trouble in the run game up against the Philadelphia Eagles, up against the Atlanta Falcons, or excuse me, not the Atlanta Falcons, the Kansas City Chiefs, and then to an extent up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week as well. So these were all, parts of the challenge when it comes to New Orleans and having the rookie quarterback, Spencer Rattler, completed just 33.3% of his passes last week while under pressure. So, you got to give him that opportunity to kind of be comfortable, keep him safe, keep him out of harm's way. But then, at the same time, as he has discussed himself, he wants to perform better under pressure as well, because he's going to be under pressure. He did that pretty well during his time at South Carolina. You'd like to see a little bit more of that, of course. I was going to say on Sunday, but I guess it's on Thursday, up against this Denver Broncos defense. So I assume that's going to be a big part of Denver's plan, is to try to provide the pressure that will try to keep the rookie quarterback uncomfortable.
Yeah, no Cesar Ruiz again, knee injury,
Hmm.
no Taysom Hill. I mean, he's doubtful, but trending in the right direction.
Right.
Limited this week, and it's more like pain tolerance, getting back into it. So, you know, the thing is, I guess because of all these injuries, you know, I mean, it's just like again, the CVS receipt, 17 players
Hmm.
on it. It's just bizarre. My question before we, go into the break and then obviously talk about the defense, which is going to be the huge focal point, I think, in this game. Is it gonna be too late for the Saints when they get all these players back, hopefully? I mean, you know, you're just looking at addition by subtraction. Obviously, you didn't get Devontae Adams. Now they're being paired to Mike Williams potentially as an option to get in here. Like, is it gonna be too little too late and we're doing the same old thing at the end of the year where they're like 5-9 and then they rally and then they just come up short?
It's very possible. It's going to depend on how quickly these injuries, come back. Cesar Ruiz was one that weren't sure how long it was going to take. He's now missed 4 games after he misses this Denver Broncos game. Eric McCoy is probably not back until after until December, basically. So the last month of the season. I know that there will be a January game, but the last month of the season, effectively. Derek Carr. I guess if he rushes his way back against the Chargers, then maybe you get him back sooner. But is that actually better to get him back sooner, or for him to actually take the time that he needs to heal from this injury? I don't know. But there's a good chance, John, that does indeed end up being the situation. Well, Harris is on injured reserve. Pete Werner has now missed 2 games because of a hamstring injury he suffered in practice.
Yeah.
It's just all these little pieces that the Saints are without. And then you have the guys like Alvin Kamara, who's playing through 3 separate injuries: hand, hip, and ribs. It's tough, man. There's a good chance that does end up happening, but obviously this team is going to want to compete all the way through the 17th game of the season, no matter what that means for them. So, yeah, it could very well be that. I don't know if Mike Williams makes you better, if I'm being honest. I don't know how much he helps, not because of anything about Mike Williams, but because of the injuries you have all over the roster. You know what I mean? It's tough to move the needle when you're dealing with injury after injury after injury. And this is just what we've seen through the first 7 weeks. What does it look like continuing to move forward? Right. So there's all that too.
Yeah, the Werner injury in practice is just, those are the ones that are just driving me like bonkers. Like, I just don't understand how it's happened. And it happened to Olave the week before, I think. And so it's bizarre, right? And they got to get a handle on it and such. One more thing is, okay, so no Rashid Shaheed. It's either going to be several weeks or it's going to be for the rest of the year. And obviously, knowing how this team's luck is, it's probably going to be for the rest of the year. But how do they compensate? Like, okay, Rashid Shaheed's out of the equation for at least the foreseeable future. Is Mason Tipton, he's a guy that has that type of skill set? Do they have something else on the roster? What can they do? Because Shaheed's obviously not just a returner. He's not just somebody that can stretch the field, but what do they do in his absence beyond this game, especially tonight?
Yeah, I think Mason Tipton's the guy that I'm watching to potentially to at least fill the field stretcher role. But you remember, John, when we were in California during training camp, he had a lot of those. He had a lot of those with Spencer Rattler throwing the football, deep shots, things like that. But one of the things that he was always complimented on by Dennis Allen, by his position coach, by others, is not that he is just fast, but also his ability to run routes, to be impactful in many different areas, all these other things. And so I think that there is a situation to where you look at him being the guy that ends up having a major impact from that field stretcher perspective. But can you also get him involved in other areas? The other thing that would be very interesting is if you do trade for Mike Williams, does Chris Olave finally get to open his game back up to being a little bit more of a field stretcher, a little bit more of a downfield threat, all these other things, while Mike Williams kind of gets heavily utilized in the short and intermediate areas. So maybe the addition of another player allows Chris Olave to have a little bit more of a different role, maybe that takes on some of what Rashid Shaheed was doing.
Yeah, and look, with Mike Williams, again, it just depends on what kind of assets you give up, and maybe he waited out long enough that he gets released and such. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen, and other teams are going to be interested, but nobody's coming through and saving this team, right? Like, that's just the bottom line. And so we'll talk about the defense here in just a second, because there was a question in the chat about a particular safety that came available, and we'll talk about him in a second. But first, a word from our sponsor. Hey, folks, John Hendricks here from Second and Saints. Look, we know it's the greatest time of the year again. Football's back, and it's here to stay until February. Look, over 1 million fans across 33 states got in a game last year by making picks on Underdog. Win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player's stats, whether it's touchdowns, passing yards, and much more. Who doesn't like apps? And Underdog has a real easy app to use. But if you're like me, I like to use a website too. So when I want to look at more stats for a game or look at splits for Alvin Kamara, this is a good site for us to go check all of that information out. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com, sign up with promo code SecondSaints, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code SecondSaints to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 or older, 19 and older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 and older in Colorado for some games, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. I love Underdog because it's so easy to use and it's so fast to get started and play. Sign up process is really smooth, and they have a slick mobile app. So what are you waiting for? Go check out Underdog today. Use that code SecondSaints, and we'll see you in the game. All right, welcome back to our preview show for the Saints and Broncos game. Ross Jackson alongside me. And so, look, you're looking at this defense, which is, I mean, let's call a duck a duck. They've been bad, right? Like, It's been bad, right? The missed tackles, the quote unquote effort yet last game, and this is 2 weeks in a row. Like, it started with the Chiefs, and then it was Tampa. What's going on with this defense?
Yeah, I would go so far as to say that it's been at least 3 games in a row too, John,
Mhm.
because I'd go back to that Falcons game as well. 10 missed tackles in that game, 13 last week against the Chiefs, and then 15 this past week up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And opponents going up against the Denver Broncos are averaging about 10.3 missed tackles going up against Denver. So not a great sign for the Saints going into this game. But yeah, I think that's got to be the big thing that they get fixed. I mean, you used the word atrocious earlier. That's exactly the word that Dennis Allen used to describe the Saints tackling efforts after that Tampa Bay game. And so I think there's a combination of two things that you're watching is can they tackle on the first effort, right? Can they get the ball carrier to the ground? And then also, can the first player to make contact with the ball carrier be somebody from the first two levels? Because we're seeing a lot of tackles by safeties and corners down in the secondary, back in the secondary, which typically shows, there are exceptions to this, but typically shows that ball carriers, rushers are getting to the third level, right? They're getting through the first line of defense. And so I think those are the two big things that you're looking for. Is if the Saints can do that up against a team that has not put up a lot of yards after catch in Denver, I think you at least give yourself an opportunity to keep this game in reach of your very, very, very young offense.
Yeah, look, I think Bo Nix comes in here. Obviously, he's a rookie. I think he's going to make some mistakes, just like Spencer Rattler
Mm-hmm.
makes some mistakes. But if I'm him and I've looked at some of the film and stuff, if the read's not there, I'm taking off because I know the
Run.
Saints are going to commit
Mm-hmm.
there. Like I just see him having a good game on the ground. He did it last week against the
Yep.
Chargers too. He was actually their leading rusher. But look, I think that it's a Sean Payton offense. Obviously, we know what this is gonna happen. It's unpredictable. He has a lot of personnel groupings, a lot of different things. On the tackling, obviously they've mentioned that you can't fix it in 4 days, and then
Right.
them going back to the fundamentals, like to me, that feels like hair on fire, alarming. But why? Why does it take 2 weeks of bad effort for you to go back to the fundamentals? It's almost like last year when they were terrible in the red zone and third down, they're like, oh, let's add this bonus practice in. Why
Right.
wait?
Yeah, it's challenging because John, correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe I'm overinflating, what we're hearing and things like that. But I feel like we heard the same thing last year. I feel like we heard the same thing the year before that. And we've heard so much about got to get the fundamentals right, got to get back to the fundamentals, have to keep working on technique, have to keep working on fundamentals. Why is it something that you constantly have to revisit? I think is
Yeah.
kind of my big question. And look, I don't I'm not an NFL player. I'm not an NFL coach. So this might be more common than I think that it is. You know what I mean? I'm completely willing to be incorrect in that. But I am curious about why this is something that this team continuously seems to have to go back to all the time, is working on the fundamentals and getting tackling right and all these other things. Feels like this is something that they should have down at this point. And
Yeah.
I think one of the other questions that continued to come up throughout the week is why missed tackling wasn't just an individual thing. It turned into, an entire unit's worth of issues over the course of the past couple of weeks. And so it is very interesting. Um, I, I, whether or not they got it fixed in 3 days, that's going to be the difference in this game to me. There's two rookie quarterbacks that I'm sure are going to be a big impact in this one, of course. But I definitely think that the missed tackling, if the Saints did get that fix, it's going to be a long night for New Orleans, because Denver's defense is top 5 in both points and yards allowed. New Orleans defense is not. And so if the defense continues to struggle while Denver's defense continues to hold strong, that's a very lopsided situation to try to combat if you're New Orleans.
And this is a coaching issue. I mean, this
Mm-hmm.
is big time. And again, I want to say her point fingers. Obviously, this is a defensive minded coach, but you're right. Like this has been something that has been a common theme for years, right? Like this is not a new issue, you know what I mean? And so for it to keep happening, either there's something that's lost in translation, or they're not teaching something the right way, or something's just getting lost here for it to become a problem. And look, we talked about it on our post game show about the age of this defense and some other things. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
in a game like this, that points are going to become a premium. So this
Right.
is a game where the defense has to be the bread and butter, right? Like they have to
Yeah.
carry them. and I don't know if they can. I think they have talent, but based off of the last couple of weeks we've seen, it's just been really uncharacteristic, as Dennis Allen says. But honestly, it's been a common theme for the past several years. It didn't matter who the personnel was or the players were. This has been something that has been a problem. I mean, there's small moral victories that you can drum up from this and all this other
Sure.
stuff. But, this, if you have another effort, another thing like what happened on Sunday in the Dome, somebody's got to be held accountable. You know what I mean? Like, you got to either put somebody in the bench, you got to start putting that pressure up. And, look, I saw the interview or heard the interview about looking beyond the results from Mickey Loomis and stuff, which I could get it. I know they're committed to DA. I know that they want to support him and all this other stuff, but at some point, when's enough?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't, I'm with you. I understand the angle I understand defending your head coach, right? No general manager, at least not a good one, is going to go on to a radio interview and trash their head coach. You know what I mean? I mean, you watched Jerry Jones this week go out there and threaten jobs that he doesn't even hire, just as a circumstance to distract away from what's going on with the team. Like, you're going to defend, at least Mickey Loomis isn't going that far. And so you're going to defend the guys that are currently in your building. We saw that all last year with Pete Carmichael, right? Everybody defended the heck out of Pete Carmichael all year. And then when they got the chance to move on from him, they did. Everything. I'm not saying that that's going to happen with Dennis Allen, but I do think you have to be results based, because listen to what every single player and coach tells you otherwise, right? Every single player will tell you, it doesn't matter if I go out there and catch 200 receiving yards or intercept 3 passes or get 5 sacks. If we didn't win the game, none of it matters. You hear that all the time. You hear from coaches all the time too. Like, well, yeah, that did work, but bottom line, still lost. And so everybody is results based. Everybody pays attention to the results. And the process gets paid attention to during the process. But then when it comes time to evaluate that process, the only thing that you have to turn back to are the results. And this isn't a clean slate in 2024. This is 2022, 2023, 2024, all mashed together, right? You have to look at it all cumulative and be able to understand what was the process, what did that process lead to, and those are the results. And oftentimes, based on the results, tough decisions have to be made. So there's a lot of pressure on this New Orleans Saints team to turn things around, whether that's from the coaching perspective, the player perspective. It really doesn't matter, right? Everybody shares in the success. Everybody shares when the success isn't there, and therefore everybody's got to share kind of in the improvement. Juwan Johnson spoke with us earlier this week, and he talked about everybody being kind of 1/11th. Coach Darren Rizzi's kind of motto, he said. Everybody has to do their job. And if everybody goes out there and does their job, then you get good results. If that's the case, then if not everybody's doing their job, you're going to get bad results. And therefore, everybody shares in it. So I understand. I'm with you. I get the idea of making sure that you're standing by your guys. But yeah, of course you have to look at the results, but you don't look at the results until the results are in.
Right. Yeah. And look, it's a performance-based business. And I remember a long time ago in my retail days that somebody told me, don't get efforts confused with results. Like, it's just one of those things where, you got the efforts in there, but did you win or lose? And that's kind of what matters here, especially when you're behind the 8 ball and stuff. And you can sit here and make all the excuses in a day, but who cares? You know what I mean? Like, nobody cares that your team is dealing with all these soft tissue injuries and all this other stuff. Like, you're still expected to win in this league, and teams, win despite injuries, and they overcome that type of stuff, and they got to find a way. And, defensively, obviously, this is kind of not I say quote unquote healthy. You don't have Pete Warner in there, and you got your secondary. Tyron's been dealing with some stuff, obviously a forearm contusion, but first part is, what do they need to do against Denver besides the tackling? And then B, Jamal Adams is on the availability. Is he somebody that the Saints should look at?
No, I think that when it comes to the defense, no on Jamal Adams. When it comes to the defense and what it is they have to do, I think the biggest thing is getting interior pressure on Bo Nix, but being able to keep contained on the outside. You have to force Bo Nix to throw the football under duress, not run away with the football because of pressure, but you have to get him under pressure and force him to throw the football and then create those turnovers. Now, the Saints last week had 3 interceptions, had a punt return for a touchdown, scored 27 points, and lost by 24. So it's not going to tell the entire story, right? Of course, when you do things like that. But I think that has to be another big key along with the tackling.
Yeah, Ross pulled the Randy Jackson. He said, "It's a no for me, dog."
It's a no for me, dog. Simple.
Yeah, and look, we're gonna see very quickly how it goes. Team has a mini bye after this one. Ross, let's break it down. I mean, how does this play out? Who wins this game and why?
20-16. I think it's gonna be low scoring. I think it's gonna be all about defense. And I think the better defense wins. And so I've got the Broncos winning this one.
I don't think anybody would disagree with you. When I did my game by game predictions, I actually gave this a win because of the emotions, the energy.
Same.
Drew's in the house. They don't really play that well. It's prime time. Dennis Allen doesn't have a good record on it. Look, the back's against the wall. I just don't think they have enough there. I think it's probably more like a 24-17 type of game.
Sure.
I'm going to take the Broncos in this one. I know that I want to pick the Saints in some aspects because of everything that's happened, but I just don't see it, it's no dig anybody, but this team has got a lot of issues and a win would go a long way. But the problem is, I just don't know if there's enough there. And I don't want to say this locker room's not defeated. I'll tell you that much.
No.
They're not defeated by any means. They know that they can pick this up. And I know a lot of people are saying, okay, when we can get healthy, this still be even better. But right now it's struggle bus. And when you're struggling in this league and you're doing this type of thing on a short week, I just don't know that they got enough firepower and ammo and enough in them to correct it to win this game.
Yeah. They'll have to start their scratching and clawing back after this week. I think it's too tight a turnaround. It's tough. They're hurt. They're injured. There's so much uncertainty and all that. If they're going to claw their ways back, which I do think is still something this team has the, let's just say, determination to do. I don't think it starts this week.
Yeah. And of course they could surprise us. They could
start.
They could. Week. If this team that was in the second quarter shows up for 4 quarters, there's too many variables. And look, it's unfortunate, but they could drop to 2-5. And at that point, there's got to be some different conversations because you can't just keep having this type of non-success in this league. And for New Orleans Saints fans, y'all know, everybody knows that this isn't how this team should be right now. And so I don't know if anything will change if they lose or when they lose, but we'll find out. But stranger things have happened. We'll have our post-game show. We'll figure out if we're going to do live or we'll do tomorrow morning since it is going to be a late night and such.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Ross.
I always forget about that part.
Of course, yeah, it's a little bit different. And we got some other things. But Ross, quickly before we get out of here, what's coming up on Locked On and LouisianaSports.net?
Yeah, we have the crossover Thursday episode. Myself and Sarah Bedinger from over at Locked On Broncos breaking down this matchup. So funny how much the Sean Payton run Broncos sound like the Sean Payton run New Orleans Saints. It's so interesting to hear all that. So you can check that out. That's going to premiere in a little bit over at Locked On Saints. The audio is already up. And then wrote a piece over at LouisianaSports.net about the tight end room and sort of their embodiment of the culture of selflessness that the New Orleans Saints have been trying to build since that big team meeting at the end of last year. So big column there. And then more episodes coming up over at Locked On Saints, of course, including post game, all that stuff. What you got, bud?
Man, we got our pregame report up. It's game day, so we got all this fun stuff that's coming up. So just keep tuned there. A lot of cool nuggets and information in that. But it's going to be nice to get a small little break after this one, and then we got Los Angeles right behind it. But we'll see, guys. I don't know. I don't have a complete read on this game. I just don't see enough. I don't see it, and it's such an emotional game tonight. I don't know if the dome's going to be even remotely packed and stuff. I think it will be, but just a lot of question marks for this team, and it's bad when you're 2-4 team. You are what your record says, which is something they said. they are what their record says. So that's going to do it for our preview show. As of course, make sure you subscribe, like, all that fun stuff. Tell your friends, and we appreciate all the support. But that is going to do it for us. We will talk to you after the game. John Hendricks on behalf of Ross Jackson for Second and Saints signing out. Have a good one, guys. Thanks.
Love you.